equivalent of 5. That is, that everybody on the planet lived the way we live in the United States, we'd be using up 5 Earths. And this is framed in terms of the resources that we withdraw from the planet that can be naturally renewed within the time scale that we need them to be renewed. Water, soil, whatever sort of natural resource you can think of, as we withdraw it, it should be naturally renewed so that the next person, the next generation, or even the next person to come along would still have the same abundance of that resource that we enjoy. That's what sustainability means to me. The primary reason in my mind that we are not sustainable is because we are overpopulating the planet. And there are other estimates that a sustainable human population on this planet would be around 4 billion people. Anybody know what our current human population is? 7.6, and headed to 9.5 or more by mid-century. And so the discussion of repairing human population growth, limiting human population growth, and then going back to a lower human population growth is a really important discussion that I don't see happening very much in our nation or in our classes. And I'll just wrap up this little bit with the best idea I have heard with regard to resolving the problem of human population explosion is to give women of the world, around the world where they are so suppressed and controlled by a male-dominated culture, education, to educate the women of the world and give them back their body rights, give them back the rights to their body without the influence of a male-dominated culture, a male-dominated government. And where that has been done, Europe, North America, and other places. And even though here in the United States, there are still challenges with regard to that, but where that has been done, population growth has come down, and it's even going into negative. There's actually a pretty large body of work out there on this subject, and so I just toss that out there as something that, as a sustainability effort, I think that takes you back to fundamental principles. So,
Chip, America's community colleges, about 56 to 60% of the students in 1,200 community colleges are women.
So I've seen numbers like that.
Yeah. So I think the community college systems have a unique responsibility.
Right. So again, women running this country and running the world, in my opinion, I think do a much better job. Sorry, ladies, I didn't mean to put it all on you, but it's been on us for a while. We screwed it up. Let's have someone else take it. So given all that, given overpopulation, given lack of sustainable resource use around the world, then we layer additional stuff on top of that, and climate change, in my mind, is sort of the next big thing we layer on top of this already very dangerous, unsustainable situation on our island Earth, our single island, our very small place. And so climate change is what I want to talk to you about. Now, I'm a physical scientist, I'm a geologist, I'm a professor of geology and geophysics at Manoa, and I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology, known as SOAST. And we have departments in oceanography, geology and geophysics, atmospheric sciences, and a bunch of research units that do similar sorts of research. So you guys are going to be a little challenging audience for me. And I know that I'm going to be making some assumptions when I talk about climate change that are probably not appropriate assumptions to make with regard to you guys being able to connect the dots and understand what I'm saying. So please shout out your questions, tell me to slow down, tell me to stop, raise your hand, and let's make sure that at least with the basic concepts we are on the same page. Is there a way to, thank you, I think we can clear off the screen. So I've written a little booklet that is designed for high school students called Climate Change in Hawaii. It's available at my research website, which is www.soas.hawaii.edu/. This is about 30 to 40 pages long. It talks about most of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you today about. It starts off with a discussion about climate processes in Hawaii. For instance, why do we have clouds here? Why is there a bottom to the clouds? Why is there a top to the clouds? How is this changing as the air becomes warmer? This is where we get our water, by the way. So as clouds change, our water availability changes, and this is a fundamental problem. We talk about sea level rise and other issues related to climate change. One of the things governing climate in Hawaii and throughout the Pacific is variability, meaning that the climate is not the same from year to year or from decade to decade. We've all heard the term El Nino. You've probably heard the term La Nina. You may not have heard the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, which is an El Nino-like thing that lasts for decades. All of this is discussed in high school language. I hope it's high school language, which probably makes it, in fact, I know it makes it very appropriate for college students. This is discussed in here. So variation in climate is very important to understand what's happening in Hawaii and other Pacific islands. This is another booklet that you can download as a PDF. They're available on this website. I read that address for you a minute ago. And this blue link right here, with the line above it, you can connect. You click on that and you'll get a bunch of PDF booklets on climate change in American Samoa, in Guam, in Micronesia, all the U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands. I've written climate change booklets on it, so they're all available there. I've also written a textbook called Climate Change, What the Science Tells Us. It's published by Wiley, and it's obscenely expensive. If you email me, I'll give you a PDF of the whole thing, and you can just have it. Sorry it's so expensive, but that's how it is. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So this is a time scale which starts in 1880 and comes all the way up to present day. And these are the average monthly temperatures of planet Earth in the atmosphere. Okay. It's off the chart. That's too bad, because the really interesting one is out here. Maybe you can see it. Yeah. Can you see this point up here?
Yeah.
So here's 2015. The average global temperature in 2015. These are monthly temperatures, but the average global temperature was right here last year. That's February. Look at that point compared to everything else here. February was a ridiculously hot year. It was scary for climate scientists. We were like, oh my God, what's happening? Is the world coming to an end? This is just a ridiculously hot temperature. Since then, March, April, May, and June we don't know yet, but the temperature has come back down. It's still up above the average of 2015, which is just at this temperature is still up in here. And this peak is related to El Nino. We had an El Nino in 2015. It started in 2014, culminated in 2015, it's now ending. And El Nino is probably the most influential natural process on climate change in Hawaii. So we're going to talk about El Nino over there. What we're seeing has no precedence in terms of global changes to the climate. 2014 was the hottest year to date. 2015 smashed that record by 20%. Usually, from one year to the next, when you set a temperature record for hottest year on our record, it's by a fraction of a percent. 20% 2015 smashed the record. And 2016 has a 98% probability of setting yet another new record. We've never seen 2 years set records, much less 3 years in a row. So something fundamentally has shifted in the last couple of years, and climate change now seems to be ramping up and taking off. The past 8 or 9 months have been the warmest months ever. 15 of the top 16 warmest years have occurred in the last 16 years, since the year 2000. And carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere grew more in the past 12 months than they have at any time since we began measuring them. So last year, despite lots of talk about sustainability and greenhouse and reducing our carbon footprint, last year more CO2 went into the atmosphere than ever before. And unfortunately, the U.S. Energy Information Administration came out with a report just a few weeks ago which said that there will be continued dominance of coal, gas, and oil, with a 34% rise in their global use over the next couple of decades. So the message, while it's largely believed and accepted around the world that climate change is real and we need to do something about it, it has not yet gotten down to the ground level where we need to stop producing carbon, stop using carbon as our primary energy source. So there's not a lot of optimism out there in terms of slowing down climate change. But there are points of brightness. China, which is the 800-pound gorilla in the room in terms of producing greenhouse gases, has finally decided that it's not right that an 8-year-old child gets lung cancer in Beijing. And the air quality in Beijing comes from gasoline-burning cars and coal as a source of electricity. And so they are moving rapidly away from using coal. They are moving rapidly towards electric cars. They're spending $1.8 billion in putting car charging stations around China. And they're ramping up the creation of electric cars in China in a very rapid way. So China is actually, in the last year, China's carbon production has flattened off. And that was 2 years ago. And last year, China's carbon production actually had a slight negative to it. So China seems to be doing a great job in this regard. And that's one of the real benefits of having a dictatorship, right? A communist society. It's like, when the guy in charge says, we're going to solve this problem, well, by golly, you get the problem solved.
We need a dictator.
Right?
There's one out there.
India is the next one, though. India has over 1 billion people, and we need India to, although they buy into climate change and they buy into sustainable energy, the infrastructure and actually making that happen is going to take a lot longer in India. So India is the next one, and in a couple of years, India will be the largest carbon producer on the planet. Right now, it's China. So there are some good points. The United States, we have significantly increased our use of sustainable sources of electricity just in the last couple of years. So the United States seems on the right path. In the Conference of Parties last December in Paris, nearly every nation on the planet signed a pledge to reduce greenhouse gas production sufficiently to reach 2 degrees C warming. We're currently at 1 degree centigrade warming above the background natural level. The pledge is to stop warming at 2 degrees. But when you actually look at the pledge, it actually won't stop warming until we're at 3.5 degrees. And so everybody has to up their game. We have to develop more severe pledges to reduce our carbon production. So there's a lot we still need to do, but we're on the path. We're on the road. So what would the future look like? And in a word, it's El Nino. So I want to discuss El Nino a little bit. We had an El Nino in 2015 that hit the world and hit Hawaii. And what we saw in Hawaii is typical of any El Nino. We had heat waves here last year. We had extreme rain last year in Hawaii. We had a failure of the trade winds. We had a very active hurricane season, a record-setting hurricane season. We had record-setting large winter waves. We had drought. We had a drought declaration 9 months ago, and we've been in drought ever since. We had high ocean temperatures. You may have read about coral bleaching all around Hawaii. It's the most dramatic coral bleaching we've had in our history. These are all going to happen every time we have an El Nino. And these are typical Hawaiian results in an El Nino year. And the research, a lot of my slides you'll see the references down here. You're not expected to read them, but they're available to you. The research indicates that as we move forward into a warmer future, we're going to have more El Niños, and they will be more powerful. So what we saw in 2015, I like to tell people, is a glimpse of our future. That's what we will be moving into. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but
That's all right.
how often do El Niños occur?
They are not predictable, they're not cyclical, they're
Okay.
episodic. So they occur on the order of every couple of years, but there are weak El Niños and there are powerful El Niños. The really powerful ones, like we just saw in 2015, have been roughly a decade or more in spacing. 1998 is the last big one. 2010, only a few years ago, was a pretty strong El Nino, but not as big as what we just saw. What is El Nino? It is a Pacific climate phenomenon. Normally in the Pacific, we have trade winds, right? You all know what trade winds. They come out of the northeast and they blow through Hawaii and through the North Pacific towards the west. We have southern hemisphere trade winds that do the same thing. I won't go into where these trade winds come from, but if you ask, I can tell you. We understand that. So these winds normally blow throughout the year, roughly 70–80% of the year. And as you might expect, these winds blowing across the ocean surface literally push water over to the western Pacific. So there's higher sea level here because the winds blow water over there. And the water is very warm. It's called a warm pool. It has deep roots. It goes down deep into the ocean. So there's this body of very warm water piled up against the western part of the Pacific Ocean. And it stores heat that would otherwise be in the atmosphere. Because this water is warm, it easily evaporates. So you have rainy conditions, which are in the monsoon. You've all heard the term monsoon. That's a season of rain, which drives and allows for major food production throughout Southeast Asia and India. Without the monsoon, we'd be severely deprived of an important source of food. So this is an important process. When El Nino happens, we have some wind gusts that come from the west, and they shut down the trade winds, and they push this water over to the eastern Pacific. And as the water comes from the west to the east, it rises up, it stretches out, it becomes shallow, and it releases all that heat to the atmosphere. And as it passes by Hawaii, this heat gives us heat waves. And it evaporates, the water evaporates easily so we can get extreme rain. And over here, the warm water provides the energy for tropical cyclones. And this is where our tropical cyclones and hurricanes are generated. And when you give them warm water, that heat rises up off the ocean, and that's what produces the tropical cyclone. And the strong tropical cyclone is a hurricane. So that's the physical basis, this heat and the movement of this water back and forth. You get drought over here because you have cold water that rises up from the deep ocean to replace that warm pool, and you have drought conditions, and you have starvation, and you have famine.
Chip,
Yep.
what causes it to go cool on the side west? Go the other direction?
What causes the El Nino is not extremely well understood, but we do know that you start to get some westerly wind bursts, they're called. The wind starts to blow in this direction. Why that happens, we're not sure. It's related to atmospheric pressure. Wind is just air moving towards low pressure. And fundamentally, what causes that, we don't really understand. That's one reason why we can't predict El Niños. We can see them coming a year out, maybe 2 years out. We see the conditions starting to form, but we can't predict it like we can predict that the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. Okay, so let's go through some of these effects. Heat waves are the most fatal form of climate change. And in Hawaii, last year's temperature was a little bit above 1 degree Fahrenheit hotter than normal. So we had a hot year last year. We had 25 record-setting warm days in Hawaii and 4 record-setting cold days. In a normal climate, you would have a 1-to-1 ratio. You'd have an equal number of cold days and warm days setting records. High heat is stressing the HECO grid with calls in the past 2 years to turn off our air conditioning at home. Last August and September and the previous August and September, our electricity utility sent out emergency notices to everybody. Please do not run your air conditioning at night. We can't provide all that electricity to you. It will cause a blackout. Heat waves cause everybody to run their air conditioning at night, and that brings down the grid and you have a blackout. When you have a blackout, elderly people, ill people, the young, that are up in high rises that can't take the elevators because there's no electricity and can't take the stairs because it's too physically demanding, are stuck in a hot box, an apartment building that does not have air conditioning. And after 48 to 72 hours, you move into a fatal situation for people that are physiologically weak. They'll phone the police, fire, the ambulance, but we only have a few hundred emergency responders, yet there will be thousands and thousands of phone calls coming in. Even if you get through, their response is going to be, it's going to take us 3 days to get to you. Sorry, we have too many other people that are calling as well. So this is what leads to fatalities. In 2004, 75,000 people died in a heat wave in Europe. In 2010, 55,000 people died in a heat wave. Exactly the same conditions I'm describing. Last year, 2,400 people died in a heat wave in India. We have a heat wave happening right now. Downtown LA today is expecting 100-degree temperatures, and between LA and Phoenix, they're expecting 118 to 119-degree Fahrenheit temperatures in the southwest US. These are going to be record-setting temperatures. There will be some fatalities. All around the world, these heat waves are cropping up, and they are a characteristic of climate change and global warming, and they are worse during El Nino years. Globally, record-setting hot days compare 12 to 1 to record-setting cold days. And total, since the year 2000, we've had 140,000 deaths around the world attributable to heat waves that were stronger than they would be naturally because of climate change, because of global warming. All right, so here's a picture of downtown Honolulu. I think it was in September. There were a couple of times like this where we had extreme rain. August, September, and November, we had 11 days of record-setting rainfall causing flooding. It's just related to all that moisture coming off the hot water. When you have all that moisture in the air, you can get extreme rainfall. And even without an El Nino, a warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor. So when it does rain, it rains cats and dogs. 2015 had 9 months of below average rainfall, despite having these periods of intense flooding, intense rain. So that's one of the ironies of global warming is with more water vapor in the warmer atmosphere, you get both drought and extreme rain. And currently we're in a declared state of drought. Global drought has increased 10%, and global extreme rainfall has increased 12%. So you get these extremes. It's weather on steroids. It's not one way or the other. It's the weather that we're familiar with, but in very powerful doses. Here's also Honolulu. I think this is Dillingham Boulevard. So much rain comes down that the diameter of our drainage pipes, the drainage that takes our rainfall and sends it out to the ocean, the diameter is underfit. It's too small for the amount of rain that we're now getting. That diameter is carefully engineered for rainfall that we used to get, but now it's underfit. So our engineering systems are not scaled to the new types of weather we get. And much of our transportation infrastructure is very old. If this stream had risen any further and started hitting this very old bridge out in Kapalui, we'd have damage to this bridge. This is the only road that runs up to along the windward side of Oahu. And so all the communities along the windward side that rely on this bridge and a dozen others just like it would all have to go around through Haleiwa, and you know that that's already a place that has horrible traffic jams. So we're really a very fragile society in terms of what climate change can do to us. Future rain. It's very difficult to model the future rainfall in Hawaii, to understand how rainfall is going to change in Hawaii. And there are a number of groups at the University of Hawaii that are working on this. One of the common conclusions that we've come to in modeling future rainfall is that we're expecting to see decreased winter rain in dry areas. Now, winter is our wet season, and dry areas depend on our wet season more than other areas. So this is a negative. And dry areas are where we grow our food. The very wettest areas are up in the steep watersheds, up in the ridges and peaks of our shield volcanoes, like the Ko'olaus or the Waianae volcano. And those areas will probably have more water. There'll be more rain up in those areas. But getting the water from where it's going to increase in a warmer world to where we grow our food and the water will decrease in a warmer world, that's an engineering phenomenon that we have to take ownership of. We have methods now that they're left over from the plantation era. We need to look more carefully at how our water distribution system is going to change with climate change. And also our summer season is beginning earlier and ending later. So summer is stretching out, and winter, the winter is shrinking.
Skip, is this water focus? This is the new EPSCoR grant, right? The new
EPSCoR is going to be looking at some aspects of this.
No. It's $20 million over 5 years.
Yes. Yep. And obviously, when you get into talking about food, irrigation is all about irrigation, and so this begs the question of irrigation. Yes?
The increased moisture in the air, doesn't that increase cloud development, which then will reflect sunlight? So why isn't that kind of feedback mechanism canceling out a little bit, or is it?
Yes, clouds are a problem. Through most of the past decade, there was a lot of research on clouds. The idea that with more moisture in the air, you would have greater cloudiness, and the greater cloudiness would shield us from sunlight, and there would have to sort of offset the warming that's taking place. Different types of clouds operate in different ways with regard to solar radiation. Some of them work like that, others do not. Some actually trap heat that is coming up off of Earth's surface. The net conclusion in the current research community, and there's still more work to be done, is that clouds are a warming element. They're a net warming element, a positive feedback rather than a negative feedback. Okay, increased storminess. For the first time in our history, we've had 3 hurricanes simultaneously in the waters around Hawaii. And we had a record 15 tropical cyclones during this El Nino year. The previous record was 11. The average is on the order of 3 or 4 per year. Tropical cyclone paths have been now understood to be shifting to the north. And with warmer air, tropical cyclones and hurricanes have more intense rain, more rain, and higher wind speeds. So average tropical cyclone categories are moving, whereas historically the average tropical cyclone or hurricane would be a category 1 or 2. They're now migrating up to becoming categories 2 or 3, 2 to 3. And we see a greater frequency of tropical cyclones in our neck of the woods during El Nino years. In the Atlantic, they see fewer tropical cyclones or fewer hurricanes. Here's a spaghetti diagram of tropical cyclone paths in recent history. You can see that in general they tend to pass to the south of Hawaii, and research is showing that around the world, tropical cyclones are migrating towards the poles. So they're going to be migrating to the north, and Hawaii will be more in their crosshairs. It used to be protected by a cold body of water out here and strong winds, strong trade winds, that would sort of shear the tops of the hurricanes and destroy them. But in El Nino year, we don't have strong trade winds, and with global warming, this body of water is becoming warmer, and tropical cyclones are shifting to the north. And if you've paid attention, you've seen a number of hurricanes over the last few years that have been headed for the windward sides of our islands and then have died at the last minute. And we have not seen cyclone up to category 1, category 2. And the hotter colors are stronger storms.
Which year was this?
I don't recall exactly. This is not a single year. I think this is a couple of years. But this actually might be 2015. Yeah.
I'm curious what that number is close to or something.
Yeah. Large winter waves. Everybody knows that we have largest waves in the wintertime. They come from here in Hawaii. They come from storms in the North Pacific. During El Nino years, there's a correlation, a pretty strong correlation now that the waves are bigger than ever. If it's an El Nino year, you can bet that they're going to run the ADI count. And the stronger the El Nino, the larger the waves are. And so you get, episodes like this where water runs into coastal properties. This guy is very smart. He has a house that has freeboard. He's got a clearance between the bottom of the house and the ground. And in that case, the wave can run right underneath the house, and it's sort of an amusing anomaly. It's not a big deal. But if he had been slab on grade, if that house had been built right on the ground level, that's a devastating situation. If a wave runs through your first floor of your house, that's a horrible situation. So a simple thing like changing the building codes in the coastal zone is an adaptation step that we need to make, and we haven't yet. We need to require every building to have some freeboard above ground level surface. And of course, waves will interrupt our transportation system, especially in communities where we only have one road in and out. Overall, climate change is creating greater risk. We have hundreds of weather-related disasters happening every day, someplace on the planet. And this is an increase of 14% from last decade, and it's a doubling of disasters from 20 years ago. And the insurance company Munich Re keeps statistics on this, and from 1980 up to present day, you can see this long-term rise in weather-related disasters, huge disasters. And they provide us information on severe storms and droughts and wildfires and severe storms, winter storms. All of these weather-related disasters are stronger, more frequent, and more powerful because of climate change. And you have just a little bit more on food. I know you're the expert, and I hope I'm going to support what you're going to say. There are studies that show that warmer air with more CO2 in the air have a negative impact on the nutrient uptake of plants. Global wheat, as the example, provides 20% of human protein. With rising CO2 content, studies show that wheat takes up less nutrient and the protein content of the wheat decreases. So more CO2, yes, it's plant food, but that plant food goes into growing thicker stalks, thicker leaves, and doesn't necessarily improve the food value of our plants. By 2050, with the rise of human population to 9 million people, the demand for wheat is going to increase 60%. But because of the CO2 effect and drought and flooding, the actual yield of wheat is going to decline 15%. And so the predictions are that this is going to lead to food shortages. And when you're at the tail end of the world's food distribution system, as we are here in Hawaii, food shortages mean that we're going to be paying more than anybody else for food, and the food that we'll be getting will not be the prime food. The prime food is going to be kept by the people who grow it, and then they'll give us what they're able to release. And there's a projection that food prices are going to double as a global average in the next 15 years. And again, if that's the average, we're going to be on the upper end. We're going to be higher than that. So this also points very strongly to local food production. And my personal opinion is that we have a strong state program with regard to sustainable energy. We need an equally strong state program focused on local food production. We really need to grow our own food in a very serious manner. Okay. So now I want to talk about sea level rise, but I can end at this point too. How do you want to handle this schedule?
Save for the when we do the breakout group.
Okay.
Maybe you could go into more depth on that.
Okay.
I think that would be really.
All right, so I'll wrap it up for now. Are there any couple of questions before I step off?
Well, I just think it's important that sea level rise is affecting our groundwater already, right?
not what that's about. Sea level rise causes the groundwater table to rise in the coastal plain, so you get new wetlands in downtown Honolulu, downtown Waikiki. That's how sea level rise affects the water table. But we get our drinking water from higher elevation aquifers, and sea level rise is not a threat to them yet. Yep.
I would just thank you for the overview. It's really nice context setting.
Thank you.
I wanted to know, and I've been poking around asking people, and I want to know to what degree is there significant work being done on a statewide climate change adaptation and mitigation plan that does include agriculture and the food system? Because to my knowledge, essentially nothing is being done.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the legislature last year created and funded an interagency climate adaptation committee. This committee meets quarterly, and every state and county agency is supposed to be present. The Department of Agriculture sends a representative who is not very active. The first work of this climate adaptation committee is to deal with sea level rise. So maybe that's why the ag rep isn't playing a big role. The committee is working on sea level rise as an issue for 3 years. Their report on sea level rise is going to come out at the end of 2017, so at the end of next year. Then the committee needs to take on another climate change issue. And they haven't defined what that is yet. But that might be a time, actually before then, to advocate for food, to take on food as an issue. So there is this committee. It's considered by various state agencies as the place where climate adaptation has a home in state government. And they're currently managed through DLNR, as well as the Coastal Zone Management Program, which is in the State Office of Planning. I'll give you more information on
Okay,
it.
great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll give you more information.